And here we go.
Here we go.
Welcome everyone to Religion Zero. That it is episode 20. Man, I'm doing the intro like I'm doing our show.
I know it may as well be our show.
Exactly. So everyone, thank you for joining us, of course, for another episode. Now we are waiting on CONK a little bit. I know he's probably pulling a me. I don't know.
Is that what we're going to call it now? They're doing an AMOS. Is that a thing? They're doing an AMOS.
Yeah. So,
which is basically sleeping in.
Yeah, and probably coming in like 15, 20 minutes late. But
yeah.
Which is fine, which is totally fine. No judgment. It's all grace.
Damn right it is.
So yeah, this week's topic was up to me and stuff, and I was kind of looking at trying to choose a topic, and you guys were bugging me, and I'm like, oh crap, I got to choose a topic. So I got this one, and it's real vague for a good reason.
Yes, it is.
So being that I listed it as in the world and not of it.
Yes.
More just tackling that whole the theology and the idea and the whole mindset of that phrase. Like you've heard that phrase, right, Brooke?
Oh yeah, I've versed on it. I've written extensively about this topic, so we'll see. We'll see. Well, at least two articles and a video, I'm sure.
Sounding like some Rollo thing, like I
wrote
about this.
Yeah, I got over 200 articles, man. I'm sure I've covered a lot.
But yeah, it's a really interesting topic because I think it's so easily misused. Like people are just brother, I love that brother. We're in the world, but we're not of it.
Yes,
and it kind of gives off a lot of like weird Gnostic vibes.
Yes,
like wait, wasn't Adam made from the earth, from the just
yes he was.
So we are of the world. Like we're literally
made physically,
yeah, we're literally made from it.
Yes.
I mean, regardless, whatever people believe in terms of the creation, story, like, yeah. So there's that, and people tend to use it anything from like as a way to say like don't get involved in any earthly affair, anything from like not talking about politics, which is interesting since a lot of Christians talk about politics anyways.
Yeah, it's getting pretty crazy.
Or they kind of use it as sort of like a cop out when it comes to like having any real investment or interest in just anything that's important in the world. Like,
yes,
I don't know, taking care of people in your life, paying bills, stuff like that.
Correct.
And just, it's just, the devil holding him down or something. I don't know. Like,
I mean, before we fully delve into this topic, you want to give the people just a quick update of where you are. I'll do a quick touch on that as well, and then we could kind of dive into it because we're trying to stall a little bit to give our friend Corey a bit of time.
Stall? What are you talking about?
But yes. What's going on with you, bro?
Nothing too much. It's a nice sunny day here in Minnesota. I think we're in fall. We're not quite in fall yet. I kept thinking we're in fall. Like it's slowly starting to cool off. Different parts of the day. We're not having some hot weather. It's actually like 70s and low 80s and such. Like it doesn't get too hot now. So you know what that means. Winter's just around the corner.
This would be like 18th winter for the year for you guys, like
something like that.
Something like that.
We've had blizzards and stuff in September.
Right, in between, not like a couple of days, but like a day where you get like some snow.
Or multiple days. Or dang. Just winter just decides to start now, I mean, it's not as common now, I think. I don't know. I mean, just with, not to get into global warming, but like definitely with changes in the climate, it's not happening quite as often. But in Minnesota's, weather history, like it's definitely, I think I've told you this, like every month of the year, there's been snow on the ground except for July.
So, I remember that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a pretty interesting stat. Yeah, and so yeah, there's we're starting to get some more mild weather, um, and of course September, so not too much beyond that, I guess.
What is the official start of fall in do you get fall? You get fall for like a week or something in Minnesota? Is that kind of the routine?
Fall could start as early as September in Minnesota. I mean, not in
Okay.
terms of the official start, like on the 21st. I'm talking just it just happens. Like when this is the thing is the transition between seasons for Minnesota can be really odd. Like, so the beginning of the year is winter,
Yes.
and then you get a random thaw in January that almost feels like spring, but then it freezes up and gets real cold again. March you get a blizzard, then April it gets real nasty and still some snow. Then by May it warms up enough, and then it gets really hot from June into like August. June, July, August, hot. Then September starts to dip. Then like end of September, fall.
Right. Okay.
Like,
Fair enough.
and then October, winter. It's just like then winter all the way till next March.
That's crazy. I mean, even for out here, it's starting to get a little chilly out here. So just a quick update. I see Corey said the alarm didn't go off. He'll be with us in a couple minutes.
Oh, we didn't have to say that.
yeah. So with that said, out here, I'm experiencing fall and winter for the first time out here in Aberdeen. So that's going to be an interesting experience. I hear it doesn't get too cold. They used to have some pretty thick snow, but we're going into a solar minimum, which means there's a lot of less solar activity. So we might actually start getting some pretty decent snow coming in. So I'm going to be looking out. So it took me this week. This week, I actually discovered how to turn the heating on in my apartment. I had no idea how to do it. There was no thermostat. There was nothing. I'm like, so how do you do this, man?
So does that make you a boomer? Not sure.
Well, no, I'm from a totally different country. So that we don't have heaters where I'm from. So I get an excuse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know about the meme or just like the depiction of the sort of the Gen X sort of boomer dad with the thermostat.
I don't know the joke. No.
Like here in America, it's always kind of this thing. Like dads are very much like because of just they're so conscious of the house.
Yeah,
the energy bill and all this. They tell their kids like don't touch the thermostat. Like the thermostat is their domain.
Right.
And it's almost like they have this like sixth sense about the thermostat. It's like they can wake up in the middle of the night and be like, "Someone touched the thermostat," someone because kids will be like, Dad's being dumb. I want it a little cooler because I'm like sweating in my room. And
right.
Wakes up and he's like, "Someone touched the thermostat." Like, so I'm thinking like
I don't think I'm that bad off. At least
you're developing some dad powers by knowing where the thermostat is.
Well, no, I don't have a thermostat. That was the whole thing. So I didn't tour. The place isn't that big. So I was looking for the thermostat, couldn't find it. And then one day I was going out and my downstairs neighbor invited me in and his own was on. And I'm like, bro, how did you turn this on? And he's like 72 or something like that. And he showed me, I have to turn it on from the boiler. So I go onto the boiler, there's a switch there, you could put it on, you could set the timer, you could do all that jazz and stuff like that. So
you have to get a shovel and throw some coal in there, make sure it's working.
Yeah, pretty much, So I tested it out, everything's working good. So if it does become a pretty cold winter, I should be pretty good. So yes,
you're gonna have to hire a kid to go down there and keep the shovel going.
Yeah, like Snowpiercer, the eternal engine. Everybody has got their part.
Oh my gosh, you could have like little kids in there.
That is I think I just spoiled the movie, but but yes. I think Corey should be joining. Is he in the background yet? I don't know if he's.
Are we stalling enough?
Yeah. All right, so talking about the world and all of the crazy theology, we have Heather in the chat, and she said when she first read the title, this reminded, she heard her mother's voice. And correct me if I'm wrong, Amos, probably in your church or churches you've been in, they've used this almost as like a baton, like to beat people sometimes. Mm-hmm. So if you went out somewhere, like if you went to see a movie or if you went to something that wasn't explicitly Christian, a concert or whatever like that.
Nothing explicitly Christian. What are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you never went to any of those then, huh?
No.
Yeah.
R-rated movies were the devil.
Really? Not even Terminator 2? Terminator 2?
Except for Passion of the Christ. That's the whole thing. Like, Christians that were like, I only went to one R-rated movie, and it was in this year. It was Passion of the Christ, and they're like, cheering, and there's, then they break out in a worship service. No, but this is the thing: is like the nut of the world idea kind of becomes very cultish.
Yes,
and in many cases, it just completely devolves into that. Just the whole I was with I don't know, I'm like, oh, we're I'm going to church fucking 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I work, but I don't talk to my coworkers because they're all the devil.
Because they're not Christian.
Because they're not Christian. I've got one. There's a Catholic coworker, so there's kind of an alliance, but we're not friends. Like, yeah.
Oh, Red Crusader's in the chat as well, and he's like, he's never heard this term about not being part of the world.
Yeah, the world is like a Christian term. It's not necessarily a Catholic term. It's a Christian term, that is very much just to kind of describe like the non-Christian context of anything, really.
Yeah.
So movies, TV shows, even books. Mainly it's talking about like media or just like relationships with people who are non-Christian. Anything outside of the Christendom context is the world, because we're these sort of spiritual, God's people, and we're like separate from it. We're like set aside and we're special. We're not of that. We're not part of that thing. So it's a very cult belief that, that in origin really means just that, but then it can be taken to the extreme level of like no interaction with non-Christians. Like the only interaction you have any interaction with a non-Christian is only for the reason of evangelizing them.
Yeah, Corey, we see you in the chat, man. We were waiting on you to jump in. Are you?
Yeah, I don't know. Something we're missing. Are we missing something?
I don't know. This seems very much like a 10K Rum podcast rather than a religious.
This is a
religion
10K
zero
Rum pre-show.
Yeah. Just to expand on what you were saying there, Amos. So again, I know the Catholics are probably not very familiar with this term, but I think it comes out of John 17, where it makes it. Jesus is talking to his disciples, basically saying, you are in the world, but you're not of the world. Mm-hmm. And John 15 actually. In the article that I wrote, I basically explain what the biblical context of the world actually is, and has nothing to do with unbelievers. It has nothing to do with like non-Christian movies and concerts and all that kinds of stuff. It all had to do about the Jewish economy. It had everything to do with the world that hated Jesus were the religious leaders, and they hated him because of their law. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that is the context of it. So that's been my position. I posted an article. But what Amos is saying is, because, again, Christianity on the whole reads everything in terms of believer and unbeliever instead of the context in the Bible, which is generally, a Jewish or Gentile early believers, they miss that. And they assume their meaning of the word world means the same way that we would take it 2,000 years later, living in 2020. Thinking that the world means everything outside our door is the world. But that's not how they took it.
People think like the Bible is to be read like the Constitution.
Well, it is. Basically, it's open to interpretation, right? So you have like a Supreme Court that interprets what can be done.
Right, but the way that the Constitution was written versus how the Bible was written. The Bible was written to people of that time.
Correct.
The Constitution was meant to be written so that people, for pretty much as long as
the country exists, yeah,
exactly, it will be interpreted as such. So they even had systems. The Bible didn't really say oh, here's an actual government that's going to interpret the Bible just so.
Correct.
It's been very much left open, and then when you look at the history, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah,
yes, yes, and the Bible. Remember, the church pre-existed the scriptures. So the church for 300 years, you know, they came to an agreement on the canon and stuff like that. So, yeah, there is, and as I think we were having that conversation early on when Jerusalem fell. Hey, what's going on, Conk?
Hello.
Welcome to the party, bro. Welcome to the party.
Welcome. This is our guest today, Corey.
Yeah, this is, long time watcher, first time caller. Got a couple questions.
Let's actually get into how did your week go?
Yeah. Fill us in a bit.
Well, I mean, I was coming out of my cage. I was doing just fine. You know.
And then what happened?
I don't know. I'm too tired to finish the song, but
so we got
something about wanting it all. That's all I remember.
Yeah, we got to stall even further so that Bobby can come on.
We'll be here all week.
I'm just kidding, right? Guys. Yeah, love Bobby. Yeah, no, but what's been going on with you this week? Anything interesting? Anything fun?
Man, I've got this week. Nothing really happened much. I did get chewed out at work, which was interesting.
Oh, wow.
It's the first time I've actually gotten in trouble at work ever. It was kind of crazy. And it was because I literally took a lunch break and fell asleep for 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
No idea how that happened. It was interesting. And so, that's about it. It was a very interesting that I have a really busy today and tomorrow. We have tomorrow off for Labor Day. And so right. I've got literally wake up to bedtime packed for today and tomorrow. So I'm just trying to be alive for that now.
You'll be all right, man. You'll be all right. I think you could do it.
So we're going to talk about the gifts of the Spirit. No.
That's not in my notes.
No, we're just getting into kind of examining that phrase of we're in the world, but we're not of it, and how it gets easily twisted in all sorts of directions. Explaining how it's used, where it actually came from, and Brooke was just getting in on a point on that.
Yeah. So I'll just recap my point really quick. That again, the context of the world used in Scripture has a very specific audience, and if you read it in John 15, of which I posted the article. It points it out that the world that Jesus is talking about is the Jewish world. It is the world with the laws and the leadership and the temple system and all these different things. And it said that they hated him, being Jesus, they hated him without cause because it was written in their law. So the context of the world in that sense, and even when he's talking to his disciples, he says, you're in the world, but you're not of the world. And what people forget in that thing is that originally the disciples did not go outside the borders of Jerusalem. When he said that, they were preaching exclusively to the Jews for another 3.5 years until the stoning of Stephen. So again, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the world, in its Hebrew understanding, meant the Jewish economy. He meant talking to the nation of Israel. That was the world. And the word could actually be translated as land. I think it's gi.
It's kind of like the Major League Baseball's World Series.
Well, right, but that was a newspaper called The World, and they created a series. Exactly in that sense, it's the original context means something different than what we mean for it today.
Like the Super Bowl is supposed to be champion of the world.
It's
been kind of because it was the joining of two leagues, and they were kind of turning it into this whole where there's a lot of sports in the US that kind of try to take the idea of champion of the world, and then here but it's only with American teams.
Right. I think the World Series of it's baseball. Is it World Series of baseball? Yeah. From what I remember, somebody said there was a newspaper called The World, and they started the baseball series. So it was the World Series of whatever.
I mean, I personally don't know that little tidbit there, but regardless, it's just the way it's interpreted is like,
right. That's exactly the point.
Leave it to the Americans to call it the World Series, and it only has like American teams and a couple of Canadian teams.
And the Japanese visit from time to time. The Japanese are pretty big on base. But your point stands. How we read the phrase world and how the church is using it today to kind of bludgeon people. And if you go to a concert or if you go to a movie or if you play video games, depending on where you are in the world, they beat you with these verses. And that's not actually how we think they should be used.
Yes, brother, preach it.
I was just thinking though about
yes, Corey. What are your thoughts?
About the Super Bowl and the World Series analogy. Like technically, that couldn't happen until we invented the airplane, right?
Exactly.
Nobody wants to horse and buggy for 3 weeks to go play someone in Philadelphia from Seattle, right?
It's a good point.
Yeah. So that wasn't probably even a possibility for a long time. That was just my first thought.
Yeah, I mean, even
good analogy though, spot on.
Well, yeah, even just like early 20th century, a lot of like sporting events and such were kind of split across like the east and the west side of things, and it was a huge event when the east and west would collide. So I know it's a bit of a aside, but like, I don't know, did you guys ever watch Seabiscuit?
I tried not to. Yeah.
the horse movie? Yeah, I think I did see it.
Yeah. Toby Maguire is the jockey.
As the jock. Yeah, I did see that. I don't remember much about it, but I did see it.
But there was like this big race where he had to race with like this East Coast horse. And this was like post-depression, like 30s and 40s and stuff. And it was just this big deal because East versus West. That's like, I mean, even though we were like pretty much the 48 states. Well, I think 50 states at that point, right?
50 was 1950 was Alaska.
Right. So, okay. So then, I mean, so you look at it like just historically, like even though we were this full continent of country united, we were still very much split. Like, oh, you're way out east or you're way out west. And there was this whole thing like, and then we have the World Series because, compare like in terms of the world stage, like the US was pretty large. Now it's just like, it's the World Series and the rest of the world looking at us like, what? Anyways, so
so Corey, did you want to share how you've heard this verse kind of used in churches sometimes to bludgeon people and tell them they're going to hell because, they watched an R-rated movie or something?
Oh, yeah, man, I live it. It's my favorite phrase to tell people all the time. I don't know. I've always had my own personal interpretation of other people's, and I know people have used it, of why you need to buy Christian T-shirts and Christian gospel music instead of listening to the secular heathen radio, right? It's really a big Christian T-shirt really likes that phrase, right? But I don't know. To me personally, though, I really like and that's one of my favorite things to study is like, how are we supposed to like interact with the world as Christians, right? And usually people take one or the other like extremist views. You know what I mean? And that sounds fun because any extremist view is way more entertaining than plain ones. But unfortunately, plain ones are usually the right answer. So that's lame.
So what is your personal interpretation? How do you address the world in that sense?
Well, so far, to me, I think the Christians' relation to the world would be indifference or apathetic. For me, I think it's not all good, go do it all, and it's not all evil Gnosticism, right? It's just kind of there, right? And there's so many times in the Bible where you can see examples where they do something good with worldly things or they do something bad with worldly things, but all of it is always just like side issue or means to an end, right? And so anytime I think about the world, there's so many examples of one way or the other in the Bible, kind of on both sides, that like, to me, like the end goal is like individual people, right?
Correct.
We should care about that, and not even necessarily, which I don't know, sounds weird at first thing, but like we should even really care that much about the physical bodies of those people, right?
Right.
It's more about that internal part. So, like, because technically your physical body is of the world, isn't it?
Right. Well, I mean, Jesus took his physical body home. He loved it so much he actually took it back to the Father. So keep that in mind.
He broke his lease. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good take. It's a good take.
Now, what about just to further address the term "the world"? What's the scripture about talking about the devil being God of this world? You guys know what happened? Which one?
I think I had notes on that.
I mean, they don't say the devil, obviously. They say Satan.
Well, I know usually they preach like after we sinned in the Garden of Eden, we gave the keys of the world to Satan, and now Satan rules the world after original sin. I remember hearing that preached all the time when I was a kid, but I don't know if there's a direct verse for it. Is there?
No, not really. That's still speculation. But the verse I think he's talking about is 1 John 5:19, basically saying that we know that the world lies in the power of the evil one. It doesn't say Satan. It doesn't say
the devil.
I mean, we could do an entire episode on what the phrase Satan or Satan and the devil means in scripture, and it's not what we think it is. But it basically it boils down to the world that they're in is evil because it is the accuser. And Jesus says who the accuser is. He says it's Moses in whom you preach. It's the law is accusing you. You know, that's kind of the point. But yeah, and again, 1 John is a disciple to the Jews. I think he knows that the world is being run by evil leadership, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and they were in opposition. I think that's what he's talking about. I don't think there's a literal devil that he's referring to.
Is there like a pope in Judaism?
Is there a what?
Like a pope, like a singular leader figure within there.
Not since the temple has collapsed. They'd have the high priest, but there's no temple anymore. They don't have their temple subsist.
So would the evil one be the high priest?
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I'm not going to say that definitively. I would keep it in more general terms. I mean, but that is an interpretation that would fit.
What if you had? What if Jesus was around and today and spoke of the evil one, and he was talking about a certain church?
That would be a little more difficult to justify.
Like if he was using it as a way to sort of criticize the religiosity of the church.
I can't even begin to speculate on that. That's a huge.
I'm not trying to say Jesus would say this, but you know,
are you trying to accuse a church of something? Do you know something?
Oh, no. But I mean, you look at you know, just the way that Jesus would criticize structures and religion and all this stuff, and he was around today. Like the religion of today would be, probably, you know, I think the one he would obviously criticize the most would probably be Christianity.
Possibly. I mean, you're asking us to know the mind of God on a situation, which is pretty much impossible. What is this? Red Crusader say, wouldn't Sodom and Gomorrah, the chick that turned to salt for looking back, be related to this topic? I see. Corey, you're kind of, I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Yeah. I was just saying, I mean, kind of, depending on what you think her intentions were. Yeah. But to me, that's an Old Testament version of the New Testament story of Peter walking on water, and then he second guesses himself, and then he starts slipping. Yes. I think that's just the more extreme version where you die and turn to salt. But
yeah. Well, correct. We never knew if she actually died. She just turned to salt.
Are you saying there's a salt monster walking around?
No. Maybe it just maybe it was some sort of purgatory of sorts. Like she was sealed there.
Oh, you mean spiritually?
I don't know. I mean, not to say spiritually, her spirit sits there and haunting that little area or whatever, but like it was just sort of like a reminder, this is what happens when you look back. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, it's a difficult story to unravel. Sodom and Gomorrah, because there was no law, right? There was no law of Moses.
It's kind of like Ananias and Sapphira.
Yes, but I mean, in that case, there is law, and you can see, it's Peter speaking the judgment on the two of them.
But I mean, it's tricky to because you get these things that are like, wait, what's God doing?
Head scratches. Yeah. and Sodom and Gomorrah is one of those, merciful, gracious God. The funny thing about the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is Abraham was the one who stopped at the 10 righteous, right?
Mm-hmm.
God was willing to spare the city for 10 righteous. Abraham could have gone down to 1 if there was 1 righteous, but Abraham stopped. He was the one who kind of, So anyway, God, there's always a way. God always has a way to do it. God judges the city, Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot and his family are basically the only survivors. Lot's wife turns to salt, and that's not very gracious. Like, she'd escaped. But the depiction of it and how the Talmud and these other people try to explain it is she loved Sodom and Gomorrah. She loved the filth of it, and she loved all of these different things.
So we got
what's that?
Right.
Yeah.
Sarah said this here.
Let me just finish the point. So she loved it so much that if you can leave it up, it's fine. If she had been allowed to live, she just would have started her own Sodom and Gomorrah, kind of like passed it on from generation to generation. There's no way to know if that is true.
Yeah. Maybe she looked back and it was something just so horrific that, as it's said here, she got salty. It says, right, I'm just not familiar with the terminology. She was part of the world, so she was punished for bending to the will of the world by becoming part of it. I mean, that's actually kind of what we're getting away from is how that idea of the world is sort of smacked over, Bible thumpers will use this to smack over the head of people and say, you're not part of the world, and you shouldn't be engaging in anything. So eating too much, you get some crazy where it's eating too much food and watching TV, listening to even bad radio was part of the world, and reading the wrong books. Like when Harry Potter first came out, everybody was reading it, and then the church had to come out and address can Christians read this book of witchcraft? Stuff like that. This whole the world thing. And then like I said earlier before Corey came on, I was saying how Christians were boasting and just I had never watched an R-rated movie in my life except the one time. It was the Passion of the Christ, and then everyone's hallelujah, everyone's just going.
They call them heathens because they only watched it once. How dare you disrespect our Lord Savior, Mel Gibson?
Yeah, pretty much.
And so there's this whole thing, and then if you watch Monsters Inc., you're going to hell. If you guys remember that movie, or Finding Nemo, what's he doing? He's a single dad. What's wrong with that? That's not Christian. Bad values. But yeah, it's just that's mainly what we're going at. Red Crusader is the kind of the whole distinction is Christians use this idea of the world as sort of a Gnostic, which Gnostic meaning a separation between the flesh and the spirit. Whatever is on earth, whatever is the body, whatever we're partaking in physically is inherently part of it's the physical, and it's separate from the spiritual. And then the connotation is then it's evil, it's carnal, it's sort of against God. And it's well, what the heck would God make something so bad then? It's you make a car, you make this beautiful looking car, and then, but then you're sitting there, well, don't drive. It's the fuel that makes it special. Forget the engine, forget the car, forget the rest of the body. It's the fuel, because without it, it's nothing. It's the fuel. Well, yeah, but I want to drive it. That's the thing is the spirit, this energy that makes us live, that according to theology is that's really the important thing. So don't partake in the physical at all. That's the world, which is the physical. I don't know what you think.
Well, I was going to say we should go over the most common verse I've heard it quoted over. I don't know if you guys went over it while I was gone, but it's 1 John 2. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
flee the very appearance of evil or something, isn't it?
This one's the three things that John thinks is of the world, and it's the desires of the flesh, the desire of the eyes, and the pride of life. Or to say lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride in one's lifestyle.
Right.
But all of those are connected to his version of the world, because it says, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, those three things, it's not from the Father, but is from the world.
Yes.
So I don't know how you guys have heard that interpreted.
Do you want to tackle that first?
Me?
Yeah, Corey, you brought it up, so I don't know if you want to go with that first.
No, I think it's funnier if you guys do.
What is it? It's 1 John 2:17, is it?
2:15 through 17.
15 through 17.
If y'all could open your Bible apps, I don't hear swiping.
You quote a scripture, then you drop it on us.
Yeah. Deal with it, plebs. This is how Christianity works. You judge people with verses.
All right. Yeah. Okay. You have it in the King James version?
Me? No, yeah. I read ESV.
Okay,
that's what popped up.
You got to read an NIV.
Yeah, I'll have to go over the whole verse. But again, I think, and if I'm not mistaken by this, it is the vanity of the temple. Is a lot of it, like the positioning in the temple, wanting to have the praise of men. Who had the praise of men in ancient Israel? It was the leadership. It was the Pharisees and all these others, and it was the espousing for power and wealth and all of these things. That was the big idol, for want of a better word.
I was gonna say, who had the praise of men in Israel? The best prostitutes.
Probably true.
See, one of those jokes that Christian would be like, "That's of the world."
You can't say that.
You can't say that. You
go to hell.
Exactly. You go to hell for making this joke, and it's like, was it true?
Yeah. So I would kind of espouse it to the Judaic system where people want to be on the top echelons. They want to be able to rule over people. They want to be able to say, thank God I'm a Levite and I'm not a dog like the Gentiles. There's a lot of cultural context into that I'm not sure necessarily translates, out kind of outside that early system. It might. I mean, I'd still say, yeah, don't be prideful in your life, right? I'd still say, don't pursue wealth and power just for the sake of wealth and power. I don't think those are healthy attributes.
That's like converting coaxial signal to HDMI. Just
yes, I forgot you were a satellites engineer. So I mean, yeah, I still think those are good principles that we can live off of. And you don't want to be prideful. You don't want to be driven uncontrollably by your lust. Being a hedonist is not going to leave you fulfilled. You should, self-restraint is a fruit of the Spirit, right? It is something that grows from the life of Christ in us. I think the context has to do with the Judaic system and people wanting to have rulership, ownership, power, wealth, the beauty of the temple, all that kind of stuff. But I do think we could pull some spiritual lessons from it on, just quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Corey?
Yeah, so for me, to me, the things he's talking about, desires of the flesh and desires of the eyes and pride of life, to me, those are all things where kind of how I take it is you care about the rat race, right?
Right.
Those are all like strong feelings of connection and attachment to worldly things. And I think that is usually the problem because it could almost be a sense of idolatry, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing really separating you anymore, right? You're just another dude clocking in his 9 to 5, hoping to get a week of vacation and pay off his mortgage,
Yeah. Exactly.
And so to me, those are things where, like I was saying before, I think we should be more indifferent or apathetic to the world. And these things are all the things he's talking about. For all that's in the world, the things of you care about it, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, if you look at Acts and all the crazy stuff that happens in the early church, like they do a lot of weird, crazy, bold things that the average person would never do, right?
Sure.
Like going up and trying to debate all the Greeks in their actual
in their temple kind of
thing. In their temple, and go up and do all that crazy stuff, which is completely, out of line for what, if you cared about your money and you cared about, just trying to get your money in and trying to live your life and trying to do all that, like you wouldn't do most of the stuff Paul or the other people did in Acts, right?
Correct. No, yeah, I think you're exactly right on that one. And, but yeah, Amos, what are your thoughts on that verse about, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, pride of life?
I'm kind of in between, kind of what Corey was saying. Like, there's definitely a clear difference between pursuing such things and building such a life versus the sort of clinging to just sort of the world. Like this is the thing, is like Christians sort of perceive the idea, being in the world and doing the things, partaking, as like anything from like if you're watching a TV show, you're like connected.
Yes.
Just like it's like the world is just inside you and just it's corrupting you as this sort of disease of just sin and evil. And it's like, well, no, I'm partaking in things that are in the world. I understand that in principle, in terms of the principle of just theology, I'm not of the world per se, but I'm here. I operate within it. I partake of what it has to offer, and I live my life. Like, this was still created by the same guy who made the part of me that is apparently not of it per se. Like, it's all part of it. So it's part of it's integral to the larger system. It's not like it's a separate thing. You're not like, an iPhone is not an iPhone without the operating system.
Right.
It's just a case with some parts and electronics, some panels, some chips and stuff in it, and just doing nothing. If I try to boot it up, put some power in it, it's not going to run anything really. It's just going to be a blank screen. So that's the thing, is like they're not really, one thing makes the other work, but the thing that making it to work is not less important than the thing that's making it work. Like, this body is not less important than my spirit that's within me. That is who I am, who's living.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus made whether how literal you want to take it, he said, chop off your hand and gouge out your eye, right?
Correct.
He said those are less important than your own personal spirit and where it's getting stuck.
But he wasn't really saying it in the context to like it was more of I think it was correct me if I'm wrong, Brooke, but it's kind of an imagery, not like, here's how you really teach yourself about this difference between the spirit and the flesh and cut your arm off.
No, he meant it literally, because he did say it is better to enter into life with one eye and one arm than to have your whole body cast into hellfire. And there's a great teaching on that. But yeah, it meant the severity of the law. It meant no,
you're right. Yeah. In terms of the law, yes.
Yeah, you had to obey. And if you were not going to obey, you should go to that extent.
But in terms of the covenant we're in right now.
Yeah, we're not under that covenant specifically.
That would just be a waste of a good hand.
Unless it's causing you to sin, maybe then you might want to cut it off. I don't know. Wow. You have the freedom to do it. Yeah, you have the grace to do it if you want.
Man, you and me both, Brooke.
Identify as an amputee.
I think in this conversation there's a great there's another subtopic that has to come up, and it has to do with the flesh. And I'm just going to touch on this very briefly, which is, again, that there's so much to these things that are Jewish idioms and what the Jews meant with these particular phrases that we miss. And again, the flesh is one of them. So the lust of the flesh, when it's used in the ancient, first century Palestine, there were different words, different meanings. Yes, it can mean the physical body. But in the Jewish context, having confidence in the flesh meant that you were circumcised. It meant that you had a physical depiction back to the Abrahamic covenant. And we see that in the book of Philippians, verse chapter 3, and you read from basically verse 4 to 8, where Paul actually lays it out. He says, look, if there's anybody who should have confidence in the flesh, it's me. I was circumcised on the 8th day, of the tribe of Benjamin, Pharisee of Pharisees, and he lists out all of his Jewish credentials. And then he basically says, I count all of this as nothing, right? So this is the skubala that we discussed in a previous episode. But so when you hear the lust of the flesh, we think, oh, the lust of the desires of my body and all these other types of things. The ancient Jews had a completely different understanding of that. They understood it was boasting in, I'm a child of Abraham. That's what the lust of the flesh was. I'm not a dog like the Gentiles. I'm a Jew. That is so that there's a lot of this Jewish idioms that we do. You're not going to read that in the Bible. You have to like dig that out. You got to do the research and stuff like that. It is the world and the flesh tend to go as two topics. So
the Bible is not the end all authority in interpreting it.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I thought the King James Bible was completely divinely inspired and without error.
That's when we finally got it right.
Yeah. Nothing's going to beat that.
King James was totally a person who wrote the Bible.
Yeah,
that was what he's talking about. All right,
it was written in Old English, God's language, with an Irish accent.
See, the Bible is above the Constitution because the Bible doesn't have amendments.
Tom, no, Tom, that's not what it means.
This doesn't mean being horny.
I mean, it could. I mean, you probably shouldn't be driven by your lust. I'm not saying that has no significance. I'm just saying in the original context, the lust of the flesh there is a Jewish slant. There is a possible Jewish slant to those phrases.
Mm-hmm. It does remind me, though, one of my favorite metal bands was called Becoming the Archetype, and they have some really cool theology in their lyrics and stuff, but they actually had a single called Necrotizing Fasciitis.
Oh, interesting.
Which is the flesh-eating disease.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that's probably one of my favorite songs of all time, and the opening line is "Make it sound nasty."
See, I'm thinking here, what was it called? You said making the archetype or becoming the archetype?
Yeah, that was the band.
You know what? I'm just thinking, like, they need to get some like Jordan Peterson in there, like talk about, because he likes to talk about archetypes in Christianity.
Jesus Christ really just wanted you to clean your room.
I mean, what was it about keeping your house in order that Jesus talked about? Or was that just later scriptures in the New Testament?
That's Paul, and he's if you want the position of a deacon, make sure your house is in order. So if you can't rule your house, how could you kind of rule in the church, kind of thing?
So Paul was basically saying, if you want to be a deacon,
clean your room. Although that was a woman's job back then, so it was not exactly the same.
So Paul was the Jordan Peterson of his time.
Oh my God, we're going all over the place today.
Don't even get me started on lobsters. You can't eat the top of the hierarchy.
And really, the lobsters,
he's got his shoulders back. He's ready to go.
And really, the lobsters are the Pharisees. Anyways, going along.
That's crazy.
I'll be here all week against my will. Hit me up. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. No, I was just saying Red Crusade is talking about links of the sins of the flesh, links to the Zoroastrians. That's a very complicated topic of like the Second Temple Judaism. And that's pretty much where we get the introduction of demonology. It came from the Zoroastrians. You really don't see that in like the early ancient Jewish writings and stuff, but yeah. Sorry, Corey, go ahead, man. I was just answering the question.
All right. I may have already forgot what I was going to bring up, but it'll come back to me in a second. Wait for it.
How should Christians live?
I think asking the question is the wrong question, isn't it?
That's a good point.
Yeah. the word should no longer be, to me, the word should no longer be implemented in a Christian's life.
Well, that just means
that's a good point. That's actually.
What do you mean? What do you mean? The definition of is?
Bob, you used it in the sentence. It doesn't count.
So maybe the better way to phrase it would be what should Christians' relationships be to the outside world? And should they be afraid of it and avoid it, or should they engage in what they want to engage in? Maybe that's the question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost, I can't find a single verse where Christ or any biblical author said, be scared.
That's a good point.
Yeah. In fact, it usually says the opposite, especially in the presence of angels or holy things, right? It says stop being a little bitch. Right?
Yeah, stop being a bitch and stand up. Get off your fucking face, stand up, be a man, and don't be scared. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I mean, how much of Christian culture today is about being scared of everything?
Exactly.
So the only relationship the church should have with the world is eros love.
Are you projecting, Amos?
I mean, essentially the church takes the stance of kind of like, screw the world, we're doing our own thing. Like we're not. So I mean, if you want to take it to the extent, I mean, the church literally just says fuck the world, and they don't understand that they should actually do that.
Like, you're gonna Genghis Khan this bitch. That was the Mormon strategy for making more Mormons.
Not to promote like literally fornicating with the world.
There's a lot of lava. It hurts. Yeah.
but to basically take the stance of like just demonstrating love to the world.
Right.
Right. Literally love the world. Boys and girls. This is the family show, guys.
Oh, is it? When did that happen?
I thought this was a very hands-on ministry.
But you know what I'm getting at.
Somebody grab the anointing oil.
I'm giving you a roundabout way of kind of explaining, like, just the thing is with the church, the way the church is related to the world, like, we can only ever interact with non-Christians for evangelizing or inviting them to church. Any other reason is sacrilege. Like, we can't do it. We just no. And because of that, we become a cult. We kind of just lack this empathy for people who don't line up with our narrow-minded theology. We don't relate to anybody. We can't even just be friends. Like, and then you find, you hear these stories about, I was led by the Spirit to be friends with my, agnostic neighbor, and he just saw the love of Christ and became a Christian. It's like, what? You could have just talked to him like years ago when you moved in. You don't need a leading, just do it. Like, if you think he's cool, like, have an in or do something. Like, if you think he's cool and hang out with him or whatever. But this is the thing, is like we take this to the world to a degree where it's like it kind of gives us an out to interact with anyone else.
I think you're right. And I think we have the message of Christianity completely backwards in terms of how Christ actually lived his life. So he did not spend a lot of time dealing with, he did, but he didn't hang out with, he didn't like spend time with them socially, the very religious. So if you're a Christian,
they kept coming to him, and he kept essentially telling them to piss off, right?
Correct. They were on pretty much good terms until the healing of the man in the bed, where they ripped the roof open and lowered it, and he said, your sins are forgiven. The Pharisees were kind of spectating all of this stuff in kind of agreement until he said, the forgiveness of sins part. Then they turned. But I agree, he was not on very amicable terms with the religious leadership. Now, if you were to talk to most Christians who are in a church today, I don't think this is as big an issue in the Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox, but definitely with the Protestants. They want you in church pretty much every service. You're given to reading the Bible quite consistently. Fasting, services, giving, prayer, all of these different types of, Christian disciplines, as we'd call it. And not that there's anything wrong with Christian disciplines, but that is not how Jesus lived his life. that actually describes a different set of people in the scriptures, which tend to be the Pharisees, right? The Pharisees were the ones, guys. Right? These are the bad guys. In case you haven't read the scriptures,
bad guys. What?
But modern Christianity has more to do with Phariseeism than with the lifestyle that Christ actually, modeled for the rest of us.
Right, right.
So in terms of the company that he was keeping, and again, I'm not saying those things are bad. Yes, Christians should give to prayer, fasting if you felt led, and all that good stuff. But it is the love of God, it is the goodness of God that leads men to repentance. So Jesus was out with the dispossessed and, the prostitutes, and he was having drinks with them and having meals with them. The whole premise of Zacchaeus, who was hated amongst the Jews. He was a tax collector. He was Jewish, and he was collecting taxes on behalf of the Roman Empire. In the midst of a huge crowd, Jesus screams out like, "Hey, Zacchaeus, I'm gonna dine at your house." And in the Jewish culture, to break bread was to you're an equal. This man is my equal. We are in covenant almost. And Jesus had no regard for this idea of piety and ministry reputation and the company that I keep is going to corrupt or any of that stuff.
He didn't even have a concept of manners. He just invited himself. Who does that?
That's a good point.
Waiting out for all the good wine. What a jerk.
Yeah, absolutely. And he, making wine for those who are already inebriated. I mean, Jesus was the life of the party. Sorry to say, guys.
Jesus was, say what you want about Christians that don't believe in alcohol. Jesus completely broke the law and was like, I'm going to get these people who are drunk even more drunk.
Yeah. So,
it wasn't even a ministry opportunity.
Exactly. It wasn't even like for the glory of God. It was just to enjoy the party.
At the end of it, he was like,
at least, they're buzzed enough. They'd probably be more receptive to the gospel. If he was like, nah, we'll get them. We'll black them out.
Yeah.
That's an NAR talking point too.
We'll have to get to that. Yeah. But that shows that the whole idea of the incarnation, God coming into our filth, right? I mean, this is the point of time where the depravity of sin and the darkness of man was at its peak. And God decided to jump in on this party. It shows that this whole idea of, what we consider separated and pure and all these other different types of things, God is not on that level at all. He is personable. He is in contact. He's willing to get down in the dirt with us, with anybody. And, he's not trying to be prideful. He's not trying to, hold up his reputation. He's not trying to be separate or any of these things, much of which the Protestant church is preaching today. God is the complete opposite in terms of his personality. And it gives us as believers, if you're living from the power of the Christ in you, you have a lot of liberty to make genuine friends, not just for the purposes of evangelism, to actually connect with people on, of whatever faith they might be on. It doesn't mean you get dragged down into all of these different, things. God will stop you when you've gone too far, kind of thing. Well, if you're mature enough that you don't need to have a leading, you don't need all this other kind of stuff, you're living from the power of Christ in you, you have a lot of leeway. And if you're getting in danger, God will stop you. And that's kind of been my experience. But yeah, we don't see that reflected in the church. I don't know, Corey, if that's been your experience. What would you say?
More or less. I was just thinking of my other point, and now I've re-lost it.
I'm sorry.
Because I was in and out of listening and then remembering and then forgetting.
Take notes, bro. Take notes. I'm sorry, man.
I think I went to bed at like 4 a.m. last night, and right now it's like 9:45.
Oh, sorry, man.
Yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, it'll all come to me. It'll all come to me. I just popcorn to Amos to talk for a minute.
But Amos. Okay, so on that point, have you seen that? Have you seen that attitude of the church of this kind of separation, where they're missing out on maybe even just good relationships that might be enriching to their life, maybe no ministry value.
Well, that's the
but
thing.
Just good people.
That's kind of what I talked about a little bit ago. Was the whole people kind of use cop outs to I was felt led by the Spirit to talk to my neighbor. Well, how long have you lived there? Like 10 years, and you never talk to your neighbor? No, he's not a Christian. But then he's like, wait, how do you know? Well, I don't see them go to church on Sundays. Okay. Right. And then he goes over and talks to his neighbor and goes, he's a pastor or whatever. He teaches on Saturdays. Like no one, or something like that. Yeah. And then that's the thing is like, people use all these cop outs and say like, everything has to be a leading, and I don't feel led to do it. It's like the moment you feel led, it's just really like, do I have the motivation to do something? Most leadings, I think, is just people acting in their own interests. Oh yeah, I that's what I think, at least at this point. And yeah, they so any interaction with a non-Christian just becomes like a ministry opportunity. There's just no friends. Like it's a good point that Tom Bombadil here was saying, my whole life it's been my friends from the world that made me well-rounded as a person. Yeah, that's the thing.
And that was part of what I was remembering.
Like, when I've actually had conversations with, agnostics and atheists and such, I actually find out that they have a better grasp on empathy and compassion in a lot of ways than Christians would. Now, are they like more empathetic and whatever than Christians? I'm not going to sit there and like make that judgment call, but they at least have a better understanding, and they can have a better way of looking at the overall ideas that Christians claim to, believe. Like, we're supposed, for God so loved the world, but didn't talk to it, that Jesus gave his only begotten son only to those who accept it. So that, this is the thing. This is the scripture that's been changed when you include this idea of the world. So that everyone who accepts him, with the idea that if they don't, that they'll go to hell, may have everlasting life, as long as they keep up the good works throughout their entire living life on this world. Like there's works, there's all this stuff, and it's all just kind of this idea of the world built into that. You know what I'm saying, right, Brooke?
Yeah, I get the point. And I've seen, there are some great people out there who are probably not Christian that you're missing out on. Like some of the best comedians aren't Christians. Humor is a gift of God, and they're Christians. Yeah, Christians especially Christians miss humor. Like they just don't get it, And I think even we've had conversations where people have made kind of humorous content, and it's kind of like, it really doesn't make sense to go after this because it kind of just shows we don't like enjoy humor. We can't take a joke. That's why the world, like unbelievers, don't really want anything to do with Christians, because there's no joy, there's no love, there's no fruit of the, that kind of stuff going on. It's all avoid hell, avoid hell, avoid hell. But Corey, did you remember your point?
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes in line with what we're talking about now. But like, and I put it in the chat, it's that the more you have your head near the clouds, the more likely you are to trip on the ground, right?
I like that.
And I used to always use the phrase like bubble boy, where a lot of modern churchianity is about like making sure your bubble worldview is intact with an iron fist, but I mean, to the contrary of that, when you're like, if you're trying to keep your bubble alive, you're not going to be exposed at all to the outside world and the actual like human condition and the human way to empathize with people. Like Amos was saying, it's hard to empathize with other people when you're so set on staying in your bubble and refusing to listen to heathens. You know what I mean? And likewise, Jesus. There's a good comparison between like John the Baptist's life and Jesus's life. I think they're both valid, but saying that like you have to live like John the Baptist and dedicate your whole life to the Lord and doing all these crazy things for the Lord all the time, like then you're cutting yourself off from the Jesus half of way of living too, which was, like we said, he didn't really hang out with the religious people. He just hung out with people, right?
Correct.
He was just out and about around the town talking to anybody who would come up to him, doing his thing. He wasn't really trying to be the holiest guy in the room.
Correct.
We got Tom Bombadil here saying, I grew up with Christians who refused to listen to a comedian besides kosher approved like Tim Hawkins. That's the thing. Have you guys heard of Tim Hawkins?
Yeah, he's the ginger stand-up comedian, right?
Yeah, so I used to be pretty into him, and I think I've went to one of his shows, and every now and then I think I actually still get emails about his like tour dates. And I'll look at some of this stuff and I'm like, okay, it's kind of funny and stuff. Not to judge too much on like the comedy aspect of Tim Hawkins, but I can definitely see like that sort of like kosher, perfect, proper Christian humor that's not of this world, and then he'll kind of make a joke because he's at least as a comedian you have that awareness, but he'll have a joke like he'll make fun of Baptists in his crowds because he makes a liquor reference and or just a bunch of different things. He had this whole segment a while back where he made fun of the different styles of worship for different denominations.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, like Church of Christ.
It's all about hand placement,
Yeah, hand placement. There's like all these different things. And it was really fun. But then like that's the thing is he can't really like make the real jokes. Like, I mean, I could give you like a joke about like the Christian idea of God. I think one was like, what is it? Love. I forgot what it was. It was something like, some chick was telling me, you need to love me like you love me like Jesus would love me. So then he's like, so I set her on fire and sent her to hell or something like that. It was just like, just these crazy, addressing the real crazy ideas within, mainstream Christian theology. And it's like, that's like just way too edgy. Like, and it, and then the idea of a Christian comedian instead of just a comedian.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you guys have heard of Brian Regan.
Yeah, I know him.
I don't.
He's a comedian. Squeaky clean comedy, but not Christian comedy.
Yeah, and Jim Gaffigan too.
Yeah, like pretty funny,
family
stuff.
Friendly approved. Yeah,
but even then, like that is like, multiple times funnier than sort of this like Christian comedian, because these guys are comedians. So if you want like but then if I'm like listening to if I like listen to either of these guys, they're probably thinking they're of the world, because Jim Gaffigan likes to talk about, I don't know, Hot Pockets way too much. But this is the thing is like we have Christian rock, Christian metal, Christian comedians, Christian bookstores. I mean, it kind of makes more sense, but Christian. I mean, we have a Christian restaurant, Chick-fil-A.
I mean, it's not a Christian restaurant.
Gay people come to.
I mean, a restaurant that closes on Sundays, and
right. The owners have Christian principles, but I mean, the store itself.
Did you know Chick-fil-A used to hand out tracts?
Really? Oh wow! It was a church then. I didn't know. I didn't know that.
No, someone told me this, and I didn't even know. Like they used to hand out like cassette tapes and stuff with like little like Christian messages and stuff. Back when you could definitely do that back then, but nowadays it's probably no. Like, but I mean that they're still public enough with their beliefs that they're known for all sorts of controversies, which is a whole separate thing. But this is the thing is you have all this like you have this Christian culture that like becomes like Christians who actual Christians would eat at Chick-fil-A. Everyone else just gets drive-through and to go. I'm not literally, but you get what I'm saying. Like the culture around Chick-fil-A, the culture around church, with music, with media. I mean, man, how many movies does Kirk Cameron have to be in?
He's already passed his quota. In my
I would agree with you.
This is the thing, though. This is the world idea. It's like we have our own. We become our own just sphere that is separate. Like we're our own. By rejecting the world, we make our own world of our. We make a world of our own. That is just as I think it can be just as prone to the nonsense that they claim the outside world is dealing with.
Yeah, and instead of going out to the world, we're just trying to shame people into coming into ours, essentially.
Yeah. We got to make it more relevant. We got to make it more this. We got to be even more fake and take away from messages that matter.
Yeah. I think there's also that always common thing, like, especially if someone's like, newly saved, however you want to take that. But like, let's say they were like a punk rocker, they have tattoos and, kind of dress shaggy. But once they become a Christian, then they feel super pressured to get a clean cut and clean shaven and buy button-up shirts.
Not even that,
like you don't have to do that. You don't.
Correct.
But they're trying to conform to the Christian world.
Yeah. But now this is the thing is now that they're realizing that culture that they've created is just not being received by, not only Christians, but also the world. So what do? They start to assimilate and absorb the world into our culture. Like, we've got Brian Welch from Korn. I mean, I'm nothing against him as a person.
Christian superhero, right? And Kanye. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like nothing against any of them individually as people, but the culture surrounding assimilating them into like the Christian sphere and like, we've got a man from the world. Like, look at him. He's got dreads. He's got tattoos, and he used to do all this stuff, and he can tell great stories of testimonies. That's all great, and that helps people. I get that, but it becomes like a marketing thing to kind of make our world better than that world. And then again, it's this weird twisted us versus them, that just kind of is actually kind of worse than what's going on out there. Like, politics and these petty affairs of men. But I like Pastor so-and-so after Pastor so-and-so because he preaches this message is better than that message. And this message is of the devil. And it's like, wait. And then you go outside and you hear, Trump is literally Hitler because he says this, and like, hold on, where did this, like, what is this?
It's absolutely, and for me, and this is probably why I've walked away from Protestantism to a large extent, is the view of God within, I have to say, unfortunately, the Catholics as well. The view of God within Catholics and Protestantism is way too small.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost as if the world is somehow God's kryptonite. Sin is God's kryptonite. And, if you touch it, his hand is going to lift. And, he's only in this little bubble and in these churches that are reformed and, only in these scriptures and all this other nonsense. Right. The Eastern church and pretty much the Jews as well. God is everything. Right. He is the very, in him we live and move and have our being. He is the very existence. If there is a devil, God is holding him together. That's so how unthreatened God is at the concept of rebellion and evil and sin. None of that is fazing him in the least. And what I never understood, let me rephrase that. I understand Christians are never allowed to grow and they're because of the leadership structure. If you show any kind of initiative in the church, you tend to be cut down, right? If a woman says something that's she's a Jezebel. If a man tries to be ambitious and stuff, he's pandering or whatever. They don't really want the congregation to grow. So a lot of Christians are stunted. And I get that. I was stunted for many years. But when you do get to an understanding that God is everything, and you understand that we all share in the divine mind. There's only one mind, and we're all pockets of God's mind and all of these things. You start to realize that a lot of the traits that make us human, such as creativity, is God, right? So you can go to a creative, a comedian, as you say, and he comes up with creative jokes. To the immature, the ones who are still on the milk, They can't see God in that because they need somebody to spell it out for them. They need somebody to say, this is Jesus. And they need the word Jesus, and they need, all of it laid out for them. But for the mature, for the people who've grown, who understand the righteousness of God, and they understand everything, they don't need it spelled out. They could look at something creative and see God in it, even if it's not in a Christian frame, even if it's not in some kind of, Christian seminar or whatever. So you listen to somebody like back in the day before he turned out to be a rapist was Bill Cosby. Back in the 80s, Bill Cosby was king. Eddie Murphy, Raw. I mean, these were iconic comedians back in the 80s that, totally revolutionized, the comedy world. That is completely God. I could see God in that entire transition, even though Eddie Murphy was cussing like a sailor, and it turned out that Bill Cosby was doing other things. But you can see the talent, the gift of God upon their life. I could go and listen to that, and that in itself would be a God experience for me because I understand it. But for the more immature, and especially in the Protestants, they've missed God in the bigger picture. Yeah.
Interesting point. I'll just quickly touch on this. So we got Red Crusader here talking about Yu-Gi-Oh. One of those things that's, the world.
Everything out of Japan is evil. I'm sorry.
What's next? Harry Potter? Pokemon?
Pokemon. It's Pokemon. Yeah, and this is not a knock on just for me to do. Well, maybe it is, but so did you guys ever have, growing up as Christians, did you guys ever have anything that was banned in the house, or you were sort of punished for having, getting caught having or doing?
Watching Beetlejuice.
Oh, really? That was fun.
It was oddly specific. Yeah.
What about you, Brooke?
Well, I wasn't raised in a religious home, so everything went. Although I will share a quick story where in Trinidad, it's multifaceted, multi-faith. We went to somebody's house. I went with a bunch of pastors and stuff like that. And I just, again, because I understand how the people look, there was a picture of Ganesh, so one of the Hindu gods. I think Ganesh is the elephant god. Yeah, I think either the monkey or whatever. And there was a picture of it. So obviously the guy we visited, his mother is Hindu. He's a Christian, but his mother is Hindu. And she had a picture up and, her little shrine set up and stuff like that.
Right.
And I went there with a bunch of pastors to talk to the son, who is a Christian. He goes to the church and all this kind of stuff. And he was having a hard time. And I just knew at some point the pastors were going to turn on that picture and basically say, this is the cause of all your problems. But that's clear. The guy was having financial problems. It was something to do with his job. It had nothing to do with the fucking picture, But because of that mindset, he had to take down this heirloom that his great-great-grandmother had brought from India 100 years before and put it away because of this kind of thinking. So instead of us being the light and darkness flees from us, we have to cower away. We have to put the darkness away, and we have to take it away from us because we can't really do anything. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, that's I remember now this is probably a whole different level in a lot of ways.
Sorry, Amos, did you put the link out? We might want to have a couple people jump in.
Oh yeah, we should do that.
Dropping the ball, man.
You're not checking
15-minute tardiness, but man,
you're not checking the ball. You're not checking the private chat, bro. You got to be on top of this, man. Come on.
I at least was on time.
You're 50% there, you gotta get 50-50 win rate. So,
but this is the thing. No, darn it! I think I lost. See, I lost some train of thought. No, when I was growing up in Taiwan. Some of you guys know, and growing up as a Christian in Taiwan is very interesting because Christianity is definitely prevalent, but it's not the majority religion. So when we were, by the way, quick thing, everyone, we put out the link for people to join who have questions. So, and you want to come on and say hi, great, but it's not like a hang out, because I know Red Crusader. I think we're not just coming on. We're all just gonna hang out. We're kind of having a discussion. So there's that. Anyways, we got real quick before I get Heather in here because she's waiting in there. But yeah, when I was growing up in Taiwan, part of the cult, Buddhism is not just religion, the major religion, but it's also a cultural thing. So people are it's interesting. There's cultural Buddhists. Yeah. They'll go to the temple because it's the thing you do. So one of the times I think my grandmother or something took me to a temple and it kind of told me what to do and all this. So I went up to one of the Buddhist statues or something. And I bowed to it and all this stuff. And I told my mom later, and she got absolutely furious with me. And I don't know if she got mad at my grandmother or anything, but yeah, there was this whole thing, and it kind of blew up, and oh my gosh, that's a sin and all this stuff, and then this there was that, and then later on, I was having this discussion with my mom when I was visiting Taiwan, back in 2016. We had this whole discussion, and it turned into this whole thing where it was like, there was something that I saw by a temple, like this artwork, and I said, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And what's that about? And she tells me this whole story, and I said, "Oh, that's interesting. I think there's similar to the story of Jesus." Well, it's different and all this stuff and the other. It's like, well, the thing is, we don't have this open understanding. Like, if it didn't happen in Christianity or whatever, it's either someone else took it or something, and it's this whole thing of the world. Like, the world can't have these sort of archetypes, stories, and narratives that can be similar to in our world over here.
Correct.
But anyways, so we'll have morning, Heather.
Morning, Heather.
Oh,
I think you're muted.
You're muted. Let me see. There.
I have a lot
There
of
you
echo.
Nope, you're good.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah. I do have a question for you, Heather, if that's okay. So my question for you, Heather, is is it bad audio maybe?
So you'll want to double check your audio, like if you have headphones or something.
Or if you can mute the main broadcast, it helps. Yeah.
I'm having trouble with my chat. Maybe CONK could just ask the question, cut out, and I'll try to respond in the chat.
Okay. All right.
Well,
so
it was more of a dad joke, but it's okay.
But all right. Well, we're gonna.
I don't know how to do that.
Okay. Well, yeah. We'll if you have any questions, you can ask us in the chat. We actually have Tom waiting, so I'm gonna have you.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's all fine.
It's all good.
I don't know what I'm doing.
No, it's all good. It's all good. We just that's fine. So let us know in the chat.
I don't want to wreck anything.
Oh no, you're not wrecking anything. Anyways, so I'll just do this one. All right. And hey, Tom.
All right, Tom.
What's happening, man?
Tom, why don't Southern Baptists believe in premarital sex?
I know.
Because it might lead to dancing.
Oh my god.
You're welcome. A semi-relevant Christian dad joke. There you
go. What's the most famous ride at the Pentecostal water park? The backslide.
Oh.
Don't quit your day job.
That was from a mutual friend of ours, bro.
I know. I remember.
You remember that joke? It was all right, yeah.
So cringe.
Yeah. Hey, it's funnier than Tim Hawkins.
He makes me cringe. He's funny, but I'm just like, the fact that it's funny makes me cringe.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. Wait, what do you got for us, Tom? I'm ready. My body's ready.
Okay. No, I had
How many girls last week?
What? Like, don't you guys think? I had a question. Don't you guys think? For me, every of these non-Christian influences that were just like excellent, made me better. All the Christians that are so insulated, they're like worse Christians for it. Mm-hmm. Like hands down, like Christians who do not have secular influences, they're like fundamentalist, backwater, like inbreeding, mouth breathing, kinds of people. Snake handling.
Yeah, that'd be a fun topic. Spiritual inbreeding.
There's a thought.
Spiritual incest would make a little bit more sense.
What the hell?
Well, inbreeding.
Who do you think I am? Noah's daughters? Get out of here.
But you know what I'm saying? Yeah, no, I think spiritual incest. Anyways.
Yeah, Tom, to your point, I completely agree. that I think every person comes on the earth at an appointed time, and we have a sphere of influence that we need to engage with in order to not only discover who God is, like obviously we have teachers and mentors and pastors and everything else, but also to discover who we are, who he made us to be. I think those are the two big questions. The whole reason we're on the earth and he didn't keep us in heaven was to reveal this himself to us and through us, who he made us to be. And in order to do that, the only way you could do it is to live. And you need to like be a treasure hunter and find the things that God has had planted in your life, surrounded around you, hidden as it might be, and you go and seek it out. And you learn things about yourself, you learn things about him. But you can't do that if you're only going to go this far. If you're only going to go to the four walls of your church, not that you can't, because God could do anything, but you're not going to get a full experience, if you understand what I'm saying. I think that would be my take on it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I think like knowing yourself is a big part of it, but there's also even like the small practical applications. Like if you live your whole life in the Christian Bible, bubble, and all you do is read the Bible and pray and only talk to Christian friends, like how are you going to learn about taxes or fixing a car or learning that, college debt is a scam, right? You're not going to hear that in any
or
Christian
patience.
Circles. Yeah.
How to argue. You're not going to argue with people that you agree with,
Yeah. And so like, that's what I usually think about, because my brother is like the spitting image example of that, where all he does is go to the IHOP prayer room and he does all these crazy things and goes to Bible studies that have like 2 hours of, improvised worship songs and praying all day, but he's fucking broke and like he doesn't know how to do anything, and he constantly wrecks his car because he's really bad judgment with that because he's too busy listening to his Christian music and doing all this other shit. And like he wants to do the Christian thing and he invites a bunch of random strangers and like literal homeless people like to Thanksgiving dinner, and some of them we find out have scabies and we have to like pay thousands of dollars in cleaning to like make sure nobody else gets them too, with lice and all this kind of shit. And like he's just so spiritual that he's ruining the worldly life for everyone and himself. Right?
That was me, CONK. That was me in my early Christian walk. That was me. So I totally empathize. And you burn yourself out. Eventually that burns. And I think God does it intentionally. You gotta hit the spiritual wall and start to question things. Yeah, it'll happen.
So
right. Anything else you wanted to? Oh.
Yes, I wanted to ask.
Go ahead, Tom.
Brooke, for what you just said. So, do you think Heidi? Did you burn out, or did you just give up? Like, look at Heidi Baker. Did she burn out? Because
well, she's getting a shit ton of money for this, so probably not. Same reason Benny Hinn hasn't burned out yet,
And she just likes living in Africa, so it looks legit. But she's really stinking rich.
I can't.
You should look at how much they charge for kids to go to Africa under their name. It's like double or triple doing it. Yeah, double or triple doing it yourself, and you don't get paid for it. Yeah.
I mean, I can't comment on other people's ministries and stuff like that. The one person I think you and I both know in common would be Todd White. And I'll speak a little bit about that because I do have some inside information. And the guy's tired, right? He's been doing the same thing, and all of these people are waiting for a revival that has already come, and they're preaching something that God is never going to do because he's already done it. You're going to get tired of it, right? So everybody's like, oh, the end time revival and this, that. Guys, Christ is already on the earth. He lives in you. The revival is here. If you're preaching a revival for 20 years, I'm sorry, you've wasted your life for 20 years. Right? Go and do the work.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I remember, the guy that I listened to a lot back in the day, Curry Blake, would just say, I am revived. Like there's no revival that's coming. It's here. It was done 2,000 years ago. The revival. There's no
correct.
You have Brownsville. You have all these things. Toronto. These revivals.
Azusa Street.
Right.
Yeah, and really,
Church of God.
Assemblies of God. Yeah, but really, what it came down to was just the fact that a group of people got really on fire and just sort of essentially realized the truth. It was a realization appears as revival because it's such a revolutionary just thing that can happen. Like people just all of a sudden get on fire, and I think it's not like they're they don't know, but it's like in their heart knows the truth, but in their mind they rationalize it as, oh, revival came, like Jesus showed up. Jesus has always been there. He is
everywhere.
Yeah, you just figured it out just now. So when people like have these crazy, experiences of, becoming a Christian and all this stuff, and then like, the power of God moves in them. No, they just woke up, basically. They just realized what was true already. It wasn't, and then that just took hold. Some people call it a breakthrough or whatever. It happens. I think, this is my personal belief, it can happen with people who are totally not Christians. Some realization, something clicks, and then they have a breakthrough. People call it like in therapy, where they sort of realize something about themselves. They get over something.
Yeah, but the information was already there for 2,000 years, right?
Correct.
There wasn't a magical epiphany prophecy of a new way to live. You're still doing the same shit the Bible told you 2,000 years ago.
Correct.
But now you're doing it with a smile on your face and some dance music.
But and even it's not. It probably doesn't even have to do with the fact that if it was in the Bible or not. It has to do with the Spirit of God moving in you. It doesn't matter if it's written on anything or not. I think.
Amos, did we ever share the story about the monk that we met in Thailand, and these guys were evangelizing with him? I don't know if we really quick on this. This was in Chiang Mai. We were staying at this hotel, and a bunch of guys after one of our services, they went out really happy and they started like preaching to people on the streets. And this Buddhist monk was approached by one of the guys, and he's telling him the story of Christ and stuff like that. And he's like really receptive, like, oh wow, yeah. And at the end of it, they do the cliche thing: do you want to accept Jesus in your life? And the monk says, I don't need to. I know this man my whole life. And apparently, he had been having these visitations from Christ as a Buddhist in a completely different religion, knew the complete story of the gospel, but never knew who he was, never had the name. That's been going on, and in a completely different religion, right? In technically an atheistic. In Thailand, they do believe in a God, but God is so much bigger. He's so much bigger than we come to realize.
Some of the more like fundamental types, at least in terms of perception, like was it Billy Graham, or was it his son?
Billy Idol.
No, was it Franklin Graham? One of them was basically on TV once and talking about like, well, what do you say to like about the the man in the middle of nowhere that's never going to
Billy Graham.
It was Billy Graham, and he goes, well, he basically believed like at some point God will reveal himself to this man. He might not never know who Jesus is, or anything, but something has to happen. Like understand it, basically realize, it was definitely still a stretch. It was even a stretch for him to kind of admit, like, yeah, God has to get there too. God gets to the guy that I'm not going to get to. And it's not, is it really a get to him? No, it's like a revealing, like, hey, I've been here the whole time. Yeah. But we don't realize that. So okay, we got one more real quick. We're gonna have to let you go here, Tom. So
thanks for joining us, bro.
Bye, Tom. Good luck finding your dad. Spiritually, your spiritual father.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Hey, how's it going, man?
What's happening, bro?
All right. So I just kind of want to talk. So I come from a Catholic background. You guys are all, I guess, in a Catholic opinion, Protestant.
Oh, we're evil.
I
don't believe it.
I would technically be closer to Eastern Orthodox than I came from a Protestant background, but I'm probably closer to Orthodox. Not entirely, but closer. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess a perspective that is kind of weird is I wanted to talk about the thing earlier about pride within like a certain religion. It seemed to me like it's almost ironic that you get the zealots in any religion that are super prideful and they use the values of their church to validate themselves. But, they're awful people. And then you can get people outside, of the church or something that can say, hey, that's bad. And, these prideful people don't realize that, this is something somebody outside of their religion is telling them, like, hey, these are your values. Why aren't you, what do you guys think about that?
Corey, do you want to take that? Do you want to start with that?
Well, my first thought was like, if somebody's telling somebody about Catholicism, it's bad. It's usually like, don't touch kids, right?
Good stuff.
Yeah,
That seems to be a value that keeps being in question.
Yeah.
But yeah. But I mean, that's the first thing that popped in my head.
It's like, come on,
and Epstein didn't kill himself. All that stuff.
My 2 cents on that would basically, I completely agree, and it comes from a complete misunderstanding of who God is and the gifts that He's given us. So a person gets prideful because they think there's something special. We see this a lot in Protestantism right now, and Corey is talking about his brother who's all into the signs, wonders, and miracles. So the minute you do some sign, wonder, or miracle, you think you're the shit. You think you're like God's gift to the earth. But the scriptures actually teach, no. It was the Corinthian church, which was basically in chaos. Paul basically called them babies. The completely inept. They were doing all the miracles.
New church politics.
Right, exactly, mm-hmm. Right? So you think you've come to some unique revelation or something. Oh, God talks to me, not to you. I am the chosen, you're the dog. And it comes from that kind of place, not understanding the big God. He can use anything. He can use he used a donkey to talk to one of the prophets. He can turn any situation around. But because people have this small vision of God, and God is only pleased with them because they believe certain things, they think it's them. Now, there's nothing wrong with having confidence in yourself. Like I know I'm confident in what I believe. I can teach it and stuff like that. I know that's a gift of God, and me being confident might come across as a bit cocky, but I know the source. I know where it comes from. And that's what a lot of these religious pride people don't see. They don't see that union of God in them. They think God has gifted them something and God is far away, and they're not living from that life within them. And that's where people fall into pride. Does that make sense?
It's also a thing, like if we go a little bit more old Wrath of God, Old Testament, people don't, I guess, on your guys' side, there's more of an emphasis on it, but, some people really don't, I guess, fear God in the right way. You know what I mean? Like they're not afraid that a lightning bolt's going to come up from the sky and blow them up. It's more of like, oh, you're going to suffer because you fiddled your diddle once. Right?
Well, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, we'll do one on touching yourself.
I was gonna say Wrath of God, but okay.
Wow. Same thing, right?
Same thing, man.
Either way, somebody's meat's getting toast,
And even that's pride. Even if you think you diddling yourself is gonna deserve a lightning bolt, you really think you're that special?
Yeah, you're really emphasizing your own sin, right?
Yeah, well, it's like my sin is so great it deserves a lightning bolt. No, shut up.
Yeah.
Welcome to having
no one is. I mean, no one is like. I mean, this is the thing. It's like you're seriously going to sit there and like people will judge you and talk about hellfire and all this about the craziest things. When like it's like what where's this Hall of Fame that I'm supposed to be like talking about? Like you want to talk about the Sin Hall of Fame? Like I don't even know where to start with that. Like
Paul was killing Christians. He was persecuting the church, right? And he became one of the greatest writers of the New Testament.
But he's the redemption story, man.
Yeah, God could use him. We are all redemption stories.
Yeah, like Moses killed a guy and had a speech impediment, right?
Yeah, David killed a guy and took his wife. I mean, you can't point at anybody in the Bible that doesn't have messed up problems.
Because you could say Paul is the virtue signal of the church. Like, look at this, like heathen Roman, and we converted him.
No, he was a Jew.
Right?
No, he was a Jew. He was Jewish.
I'm thinking of the wrong person then.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But anyways, Red, we're about wrapping up here. So
okay.
Thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the story of the Milnia another time.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome, bro.
All right. Final thoughts. 30 seconds. Go, Brooke.
we got another show to do, so I'm very glad for the conversation. I know there are a lot of questions raised. I do have videos, I do have articles on the topic of the flesh, the world, brookpotter.org. I think all of the links below. Check those out if you want to find out more. Yes, and next week we are on Corey's channel.
I think, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So I don't need a topic. Good.
Hopefully he's on time.
No promises.
Yeah, then I'm gonna be late.
Hey, it's Brooks' turn to sleep in.
Yeah, I deserve a late day. And Tom, your hat was jiggling. I don't know if that was intentional or what. We were kind of mesmerized by that. Leave a comment in the chat if your hat was actually jiggling. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. I noticed it. Wait, what? Anyways, Corey, 30 seconds. Final thoughts.
I think we should just take this time, take a deep breath, and count down to 30.
Close your eyes.
29.
Let the music swell.
27. And just whatever the Lord tells you in your heart. 24. You just meditate on it. 21, 20, 19.
Just bow your heads down, raise your hands if you want to accept Jesus.
Does anybody want to accept Jesus?
They want to accept Jesus into their hearts. And maybe deeper.
But yeah, next week will be fun. I think we're going to go with the topic I was talking about in our private group about New Age spirituality, and a good chunk of that is drugs. And I know,
yes,
Brooke, you for sure are going to have some interesting topics about hallucinating for Jesus.
Finally,
hallucinating for Jesus.
Oh yeah. It'll
tripping
be
for the Lord.
We might actually disagree. I'm not sure yet until we get there, but it'll be fun. Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about New Age spirituality and the church and all the denominations that try to use that now. So
sure,
it'll be fun.
We know plenty.
Yeah. We know the guy who started it.
It'll be fun. All right. But that's pretty much it. Yeah. Next week on my channel, I think we have links in the bottom. Grab those and get ready for next Sunday. Blessed.
Awesome.
Amos,
bring us home.
Subscribe to the channel. No, thanks everyone for joining us. Of course, I do think this was actually a pretty good topic. I mean, it definitely left a lot of room to kind of let us go all around in different directions. But talking about diddling yourself and yeah, it's important to kind of see how a lot of these scriptures get completely twisted out of context, and what was intended as one thing it completely turns into something different. I mean, while I'm looking at just the pomegranate as a fruit, the Song of Solomon thinks the pomegranate is something completely different. It's important to understand these things, while in some cases, like the twisting of scripture is definitely funny and enjoyable. The other ones are have detrimental effects. If you're in the world, you might as the world is just hell, is you're in hell. I mean, man, if partaking of the world were so much fun, and that's what hell's going to be like. Well, I mean, can't be that much worse then. So, anyways, thank everyone for joining us. Of course, check out our Twitter feeds and check out the other channels. Subscribe to all of them so you can keep up with us. See where the next show is going to be.
Are you guys doing your podcast after this?
We're doing our podcast after this.
Are you going to talk about critical race theory? Because that's a hot topic right now.
Yep.
Oh, amen.
And Trump defunding it. Yep.
We're going to be real critical of that stuff. And check out all our channels and stuff. Check out our channel here, of course, for our podcast coming up in 10 minutes.
17 minutes.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see everyone next week.